Hey friends, I'm Eugene.
And I'm Becca.
We assume you're here because you want to know all about what you need to know to do a hiking adventure in Utah. And we just released an awesome series, our first series actually, on the channel, all about our trip where we visited 3 different parks and we hit up some amazing trails.
Yeah.
I think probably some of the best trails in the world, at least that we've ever been to.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So if you haven't seen those, we highly encourage you to go check them out, but we're gonna go and assume that you have seen those and you wanna know what it takes to do one of these trips yourself. Well, today we're gonna break it down in a deep dive. We're gonna give you everything you need to know from what you should prepare before you go on the trip, what to keep in mind as you're going on your trip, maybe on a road trip perhaps.
That's the way you gotta do it, come on.
And all the tips and tricks for getting the most out of the parks once you're in there. And we'll do you one better. If you stick around to the end of the video, our biggest issue was about, or our biggest concern was about making sure we weren't in the parks when they were super busy. So at the end of the video, we're gonna share our 5 tips for making sure you have the parks a little bit more to yourself than the average person. And I'm sure from our videos you can see there really wasn't a lot of people at all when we were going through them.
We got very lucky.
Yeah, stick around to the end and we'll share those tips for you there. But without further ado, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the saying.
Wonderful. Let's dive in and get started with maybe a top level. Like, what are the things that you were worried about going to the trip that you were unsure about? Is there anything that you were kind of like, as we were planning, getting a little anxious and antsy? I'm sure a lot of people can relate.
I think like a really big thing was the temperature. We had heard from other people, including your parents who had done a similar trip many years ago, was the fluctuating temperature. So when packing, we had to pack quite a variety of clothing.
Yeah.
Also because before we head up the national parks, we were in a few other like different cities. So yeah, just kind of trying to cover all the bases from it being probably cooler in the morning to then warming up throughout the day. So that was something that definitely was on my mind and that I prepared for.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of the questions were about like the actual park, like how does it work when you get to the actual park?
Yeah.
A lot of the YouTube
It's a big
videos,
part of traveling.
Yeah, well, the YouTube videos we'd watch, they'd be like, these are the best parks to go to, or these are the best trails to go in the park. But there was very little both information and footage about like the practicality of coming to
getting
these
from
parks.
your hotel to like a trail or to the park.
And these aren't like some, conservation in the middle of nowhere they need to trek to. These are like full kind of organizations, with infrastructure. So definitely kind of knowing a bit about where to go was helpful. And then finally some of the...
But I will say, once you're there, it's shockingly easy.
It's very nice.
Yeah.
They do a good job.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I think, why don't we then just dive into, before the trip, what we were doing. So there's a couple of things for me. The first thing was just like figuring out where we wanted to go. So what did we use to kind of determine where we went?
Well, a big thing was just talking with friends and family about parks and trails that they had gone to. Specifically, we spent time with one friend who had done a trip fairly recently, and she gave us some great recommendations for trails. And then also recommendations to like, you know what, you can pass up this place. It's like a little too touristy. It's not that exciting. Definitely opt for this location instead. So that was like really, really helpful to just to get our foot in the door and have an idea of places that would interest us and where we'd really want to go. From there, I think watching YouTube videos around those locations was really helpful.
I think that's like a key thing. Like there's so many beautiful places and everyone you meet will be like, oh, did you go to this? Or you should just go an extra hour down south. Yeah. So actually like
you're not going to Sedona? And I'm like, no, sorry, other direction.
Finding, when you talk to people who have gone on similar trips, ask them like what wasn't worth it. Like what was overrated, what was like not a good use of time. And that's a great way to start narrowing in on what you actually want to do.
Yeah, because there's a lot of locations also that are, you see in all the Instagram photos, and granted, I wanted to go to those places maybe back in the day, but then after chatting with people or reading more online, you're like, nah, it's okay.
Is it worth spending the few amount of days you have there?
Yeah, totally.
And then the other thing about what Becca just said is like, people who go on these trips plan a lot. So even if you only know 1 or 2 people who have gone on this type of trip, they will have detailed itineraries, and it's really helpful to have as a starting point. So ask around and you'll be surprised. I found most of the people we realized did it, they don't really talk about it until it was brought up, and then they were all about it. So ask your friends and kind of just tell people you're going on this trip, and you'll see what comes out. So that's awesome. And yeah, you mentioned also YouTube videos.
Yeah.
What are some of the channels we watched? I think there's 2 real main ones that we watched.
Yeah, it was We're in the Rockies. Cheryl and Matt, they were amazing. They're residents of Utah, so they visited the parks many, many times. And they were just like very practical with their approach.
Yeah.
I think we got just a lot of good information, straightforward information from them, along with like trail recommendations and
Less
stuff
lifestyle,
like that.
but more like what you need to know.
Yeah, they were amazing. And then also World Wild Hearts.
World Wild Hearts.
I think.
If we didn't get it, this is what it is.
Corrected. And they're just a really sweet couple, very, very calm demeanor, which is very pleasant to watch.
More the feel of the place.
Yeah, top level. We also use their video for researching like Las Vegas and whatnot, so that was helpful.
Yeah, so from
And a
there,
couple of like random others, but like 100% were in the Rockies. They became our favorite.
and we were, like most people probably, we were doing a road trip throughout this whole area, and I think we had about, let me just check the number of days, I think it was just like under 10 days roughly. Yeah, so 19th to the 28th.
Yeah, it like amazes me also, like always, that we got in so many locations and so much driving within like a relatively short amount of time.
So what are the places we went to?
Well, even outside the ones that we featured just in the videos, our national parks trip, like that portion of our very long trip, started in the Grand Canyon. We stayed in Flagstaff, which was just a short-ish drive away, but really beautiful town, really cool hotel that we stayed in. And we just did one like day trip to the Grand Canyon. We did a simple walk along the rim trail there.
And then a less than simple
helicopter ride. I was so scared literally the whole time until I stepped on that helicopter, and it just floated away, and from then on I was amazed. So highly recommend that.
And for reference, the helicopter ride, maybe we'll talk a bit more, but we did the one from Grand Canyon. There's one that you could do from Las Vegas that kind of takes a while longer.
Same company, actually.
So just like a good tip.
Yeah. So then, yeah, just one full day in the Grand Canyon, and then we drove up to Bryce Canyon from there. We stayed overnight, did one full day there, stayed overnight, then went all the way over to Capitol Reef, and then backtracked all the way past Bryce Canyon to Zion Canyon. That was a really long day. Also, you know, if we had left the hotel earlier, it would have been a bit better, but that's okay.
We're pretty relaxed travelers. We're not trying to maximize every single day.
Yes.
So we
were packing morning up.
We got an itinerary from a friend, and it was like, wake up for sunrise, get to this trail for the sunrise, then have lunch at this town and do this hike. For sunset, go to a third location. We weren't about that. We would do like mostly one hike a day. I think maybe twice, 2 hikes in one day, short ones at most. So, you know, we rolled out during checkout. We had a nice breakfast. We weren't really rushing to kind of be the first ones out the door.
So from Capitol Reef, we drove to Zion, and we were there, I think, for 3 full days. Originally, we had only booked 2, and we were going to kind of do an overnight between Zion and Las Vegas before we flew back home. But we were having such a nice time in Zion. Springdale, the town that we stayed in, had so much to offer, and we're like, why are we just going to spend like one more night in this sort of random small town? We couldn't really find a good hotel in that in-between location. So we checked with our hotel in Springdale, the La Quinta, and we said, hey, can we stay one more night? And they said, no problem. And that just, well, we got in one more hike that way, and it also just allowed us more time to hang out. You know, we did some laundry, we spent time in the hot tub, we went to a nice cafe. So it was nice to just have a bit more of like a balanced day, especially because it was towards the end of our trip and we were pretty tired at that point.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I say we were pretty tired, and yet I also say I could have done another week. So there you go.
So yeah, I think like, you know, leaving yourself, I would, like having done this once, I would avoid doing like a park for one day only. You know, I would definitely try to stay overnight. So for example, I think the biggest thing when we went to Capitol Reef, it would have been cool to stay there overnight. There's other hikes, and we were very rushed coming out of the trail.
That was a
like
really
we gotta go.
Yeah.
And then we also ended up driving through the night, which, you know, is doable, but so much.
Well, not through the night, but into the night.
Yeah, well, through Zion we drove it was all like completely black, and there's not really lights, and it's kind of a shame because there's a lot of beautiful views, I think, and driving is a key part of like this trip. So I would try to, whatever you do, drive into Zion while it's light out, because it's just, from what I've heard described and the little our headlights managed to show us, it was pretty epic, cliffs and kind of like
This is coming from the Bryce Canyon direction, not the Las Vegas direction. No, because like there were crazy, like, what are they called? Pin?
Yeah, like chicane kind of hairpin turn.
Hairpin, there we go. We're using all of our Formula One knowledge here.
Like
Hairpins,
along mountains.
yes, and like the depth that I believe was there was mind blowing because the moon was just bright enough to kind of eliminate the sides of these cliffs that we were driving by, but then like you'd be up on a road, but then way down below you'd see a tiny little car driving with its headlights, and you're like, excuse me, how deep are we going? But we just visually missed all that incredible like traveling down into the canyon because it was dark out. Also, when it's dark, you're encountering more wildlife. Like we did see 2 sets of deer when we were driving into Zion, and that can be, they were fine. They were like on the side of the road and kind of like quietly walking across, but you have to be careful with the deer because driving into Bryce, we saw one literally fly across the road, and that was terrifying.
You will not have time to react. No. And also just be careful driving in general. Like we were taking Route 66, for example, on our way there, and just leave room between people.
2 flags down.
Because like we almost got seriously rear-ended very closely and just barely missed us. So yeah, just be careful, watch out for deer, keep your distance, don't like speed needlessly, you know what you're doing. Okay, so you know what parks you're going to, kind of like the rough number of days you want to leave for them. How do you pick the actual hikes you go on? So again, we use a lot of YouTube. People, suggest places, and then we kind of combine that with using AllTrails, which we use a lot. You'll hear almost every hiking person kind of recommend AllTrails. There's a free version. It's basically an app that's like a social hiking app where everyone can add trails, photos. But the reason it's really great for this sort of thing is like once you've done a few AllTrail like hikes using AllTrails, you get a sense of how difficult certain trails are. So we were kind of able to tell based on the sort of like how it's described, but also the comments that people leave, how difficult trails were, and we were able to pick ones that matched our ability and maybe a little bit farther so we can kind of like improve. So that's kind of how we picked our trails. Watch the videos on the playlist to see which trails we did and kind of like if you want to do those. But each of these parks has huge numbers of trails. I would recommend watching YouTube videos and kind of figuring out how long you want to do, how intense you want to make it. And also keep in mind, like some of these trails, most of them you can just come and go, but some of them do require permits. So for example, Angel's Landing in Zion requires a permit that you need to sign up well in advance for. There's also...
Or there's a lottery system that you can submit for the day before.
And then the Narrows has a hike that you start at the top of the Narrows and go all the way kind of in one direction. That also requires a permit. Certain areas to camp in Grand Canyon and hike require a permit.
Yeah. More so on the north side.
Yeah, and some trails might just be closed. So definitely worth looking into it once you've kind of figured out some trails, and people will comment on AllTrails if you need a permit.
And the National Parks website is like constantly or consistently up to date. So they are going to inform you as to what's closed, or if there's been a recent rock slide or mudslide, and just things to look out for, or if things are just closed for the season. But yeah, that website is very helpful as well.
Yeah. So all of this stuff that we're going to mention is going to be linked below. So go down there and check it out. And we're going to throw some affiliate links in there for some of the common things we talk about. So if you want to support us, use those links. We're just getting started. So you do you. Okay, so I think let's just quickly touch on packing and clothing kind of before you go.
Sure.
You mentioned already a bit, but I think we brought a variety of clothing, like some specific things for hiking we brought is hiking boots. Obviously, you got a new pair?
From Keen. Yeah.
I had an older pair from Morel, I believe. They're great too. One big thing is wool socks. So most people think, I'm gonna wear a lightweight sock. It's gonna be great.
Cotton, of course.
Wool, that's too hot. Wrong, you're wrong.
Yeah.
So wool socks really whisk away sweat, and this was like a tip we heard many times, many people talk about, and clearly known in the hiking world, but we're getting it started. You can buy in hiking stores, they're kind of expensive. I'd recommend checking them out at like Costco or something. We got a pack for like the price of one hiking shop ones. But so definitely take those. They'll prevent blisters, make the whole thing much more pleasant.
And they're a little cozy.
That's right. Then also we brought hiking bags. So ours had water reservoirs. We each have 2 different kinds of bags. Mine has like a small metal frame in it. Becca's is a bit more lightweight. They're from Osprey, but they both have water reservoirs. I like mine on the trail. What do you think? Did that work out for you?
Oh my gosh, it was amazing to have just like my own water right here. Clip it down onto my shoulder, amazing. But I actually, even though mine was smaller than yours, it had a shocking amount of room and like lots of different pockets and compartments, so I could really customize where I kept everything. I could shove like my puffer jacket in there when I got too hot. We had a small cooler that we would keep, like a soft cooler that we would keep sandwiches in. I think I had that in my bag, like when we did the Narrows. So yeah, highly recommend.
Yeah, so and then in there we also had a first aid kit, which we highly recommend bringing. We had emergency whistles. They're like orange whistles you can buy on Amazon if you get lost. The number one way people seem to get injured or die like doing these kind of trips is by getting lost on the trail. Either solo hiking or with friends, you get lost, you get turned around, you don't have enough.
The weather changes.
Yeah, the weather changes quickly and dramatically. You don't have enough supplies, and either you get injured or
your phone dies, like yeah.
So bringing a first aid kit, having AllTrails, the reason we say it is with the paid version you can do an offline map basically.
Yeah, I don't think you mentioned that.
Yeah, that'll track you. So you can see where you are at all times and make it back to the trail. And if you leave the trail for too long off the hike you're on, it'll warn you and kind of guide you back to the trail. So yeah, so then we had the first aid kit, we had a big battery pack. Really recommend that. Both our phones, I had the newer iPhone, so mine had satellite phone built into it too, which is a great safety feature. Yeah. We also had little tablets for water filtration that you can kind of get water out of a stream into your water bottle, put one of those tabs in, it disinfects or whatever the water. We had long sleeve kind of like UV shirts and stuff like that. We had hats are very important, and then also a lot of sunscreen.
Oh yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think we really had bugs on in our hikes.
No, I mean it's always good to have, but we didn't really encounter bugs. Yeah. You want to talk a bit more about clothing?
Yep.
So again, as I was saying before, the weather was kind of not like a concern, but you wanted to be prepared for cooler temps as well as warmer. So I don't know, I packed layers mostly. Yeah. And for me, I was wearing like athletic clothing on top, and then I would put a sweater on. I'd either have bike shorts on the bottom or longer like hiking type pants, depending on how cool or warm it was. And then I also had a puffer jacket from Uniqlo, which are super lightweight, but then if it gets too warm, you can just roll it up into a nice little ball, shove it in your bag, no problem. Of course, I just wore my hat always, but it really just depended on the weather. But I'd sometimes start in a t-shirt, sweater, jacket, and then I know when we did the Fairyland Loop Trail, it ended up being such a beautiful day, and I was down to my t-shirt by the end of it. So
I think that's because you're in the desert, the temperature range fluctuates so widely. In the morning, it'll be quite cold, right? When you're starting your hike, as the sun comes out, you'll get hot, you'll start sweating. As soon as you go into the shade, it gets super cold again, and now you're a little sweaty, so you get cold again. So being able to quickly put on or remove layers, I think is the number one.
Because you don't have the humidity. Yeah. But I also just remembered with doing the Narrows, we were recommended to wear several layers of clothing. So I think for that, I had a thermal tank top on, a thermal long sleeve, my sweater, and then my jacket. And then on my bottoms, I think I had thermal leggings, regular leggings, and then maybe workout pants as well. I can't remember exactly that order, but we get our thermals from Uniqlo as well in their Heat Tech line, which is very helpful.
Yeah.
And come in different thicknesses,
So all of this a bit depends on what time of the year you go. Obviously it'll get hot and cold at the same time. So for reference, we went, I think it was the end of October.
Yeah, mid to end of October.
And really this is kind of
during the 20s.
Yeah, this is the tail end of the season. A lot of shuttles stop running right around that time. The last group of school children and things like that aren't there. So,
well, yeah, a lot of families are going to be going during the summer because that's when the school year is out or done, obviously. So it is typically busier during the summer, and then it quiets down in the fall, winter months, and then also the winter, spring.
So I would say for, we're in Canada, so we're going to use Celsius. It was kind of high teens to high 20s probably is the range.
Oh, high 20s, okay. I was going to say low 20s, but yeah, sure.
Right now, we're actually going to Vegas shortly, and we just checked temperatures, high 30s, for example, and it's just like a month or so before we went, you know. It does change also year to year, yeah, but keep an eye on it.
Oh, one thing I also want to point out, we went during an El Nino year, so I think it was warmer than what it might be going forward. It's really hard to tell, but when we were on the shuttle heading to our Bryce Canyon stop or to the trail, the woman driving the bus said that it had already snowed at this time of year, the previous year. But the day we were there, it was like super beautiful and low 20s during our hike. So you never really know what you're gonna get. But yeah, that's just something I wanted to point out, that it was an El Nino year. So it might be a bit different for you.
And these are some of the things that might contribute to the crowd.
That was 2023, by the way.
Yeah, this might contribute to the crowd size when you go. So make sure you stick around to the end of the video for all our tips for making sure the parks aren't super crowded when you're going, because that can be a real concern. So why don't we just chat a bit about how each park works? Maybe we can include a bit of Grand Canyon in there, and we'll just kind of quickly go through each park and give any tips that are specific to each park. We can mention also any places to stay and go from there.
Okay.
We drove to Grand Canyon from Vegas, and on the way we stopped by the Hoover Dam, which, you know, if you're passing by, it's worth a stop. If you're not passing by, I don't know if I would go out of my way to do it. And as a kid, I love dams.
One of the cool things was all the architecture. They had like some really cool Art Nouveau / Art Deco architecture there, so it was very unexpected. It was cool, but it was actually very hot when we were there. So walking around got a little draining, but I don't know, it was cool. It's like a classic thing that I was gonna say need to see, but maybe you don't.
So we drove in and we stayed at Flagstaff, which is about like 40 minutes, an hour away from Grand Canyon, I would say, depending on traffic. But this is a small university town.
It's beautiful.
It's tiny and it's beautiful. I would highly recommend not only staying at the town, but also staying at the exact place that we stayed at if you can, which is
the High Country Motor Lodge.
This place is straight out of like a movie. Clearly someone who cares a lot about, you know, hospitality, and this town took over this old motel and really turned it into a beautiful spot. The rooms themselves are fine, you know, it's nothing like super exciting, but the whole property.
I thought they were cute.
The whole property has
some really nice amenities.
Okay. But the property itself and how it's done, and especially the lounge, bar, restaurant are top notch. And if you go there during a warmer time than we went, it's probably really nice to relax in the pools and stuff. We didn't have time to do that.
They have a hot tub and stuff. Yeah, so it's like a classic old school motel with the 2-level buildings, sort of, I think, in an L shape. And then there's a courtyard in the middle with the pool,
pools, hot tubs, fire pits, sauna. Even.
And then you have the main, I mean, I wouldn't really call it a lodge. Well, I guess they want to call it a lodge, but a small lodge, which is where your lobby is, your check-in, and this really cute bar and restaurant that we enjoyed so much.
Really great food, small menu, but really delicious, really great cocktails. Honestly, everyone's really nice. It's just like a really nice place to come back to.
Just like very thoughtfully designed, really great aesthetic, very cozy. When we rolled up at nighttime, we hung out at the bar because we need to have dinner. There was a DJ spinning records, which was like so awesome. She was playing like Bob Seger, which I loved, and Dolly Parton. So it just like really set the mood. I loved it. And also in the lobby, there's a really nice little shop, or actually cafe shop. So you could we had like a small bite of breakfast there on our last morning. There's like a really cool variety of drinks there, snacks, treats. And then even when we checked in, just like all the little paper goods that they have, like the envelope that your key comes in is all customized. They have really nice postcards that we took. So just everything was very nicely considered. And then in the room, there was all those little cool details went into the room as well. It was great. I wish we could have spent more time there, to be honest.
So what we did is, you know, I think a lot of people, you don't realize, come to these parks and they really just kind of like come to see it from the edge of the park. So that's kind of what we did for the Grand Canyon. There's like a rim trail that goes across the top. And going into it, a lot of people were like, yeah, it's the Grand Canyon, like it's cool, but it's so big. The other parks are so much nicer. Honestly,
or have more unique elements.
Yeah,
but
it was amazing.
Yeah.
Like, it's really big.
Well, I think it's like the Grand Canyon's like one of those wonders of the world almost that you know about since you were a kid. So to finally go there as an adult was was incredible. You're like, wow, I am here. I've made it to the Grand Canyon. Big check.
I'm a speck of humanity on the edge of this magnificent earth. Like.
Yes, yeah. So it was just awe-inspiring. It was amazing. There was a family of goats on the side of the cliff.
Those
it
are
was
really
amazing.
cool. So I think how long was our walk? Like an hour and a half, maybe?
Yeah, it was not very long. It was very relaxed, which was okay. And then in terms of getting there, like you drive into the park, you park, and then we just figured out like there's shuttles at most of these parks. So you're just figuring out what stop you want to get off at according to whatever trail that you're going to.
But it's really beautiful. Just the grounds there, honestly, are really nice.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of little like hut, kind of old. There's like a painter who lived around there, so they have like architecture, I think, or an architect. So they have buildings from this person. And each of them has like a little museum. It's really cool. Take your time, walk along. There's this whole like geological, historical like kind of trail where it's markers of like different parts like of sediment or rock from different eras, you know, in Earth's history. So you can sort of like time travel as you walk.
I nerded out real good over those rocks.
So yeah, so we took a walk there. We didn't go down. You know, it's like a really intense hike down and an even more intense hike up is the real issue. But it would be cool to do that one day.
Yeah.
But really for Grand Canyon, for this trip, we were focused on doing a helicopter trip just to really, you know, take in the scale of it. This was Becca's first time in the helicopter. I mean, you mentioned it already a little bit.
Yep.
But honestly, I would recommend doing the helicopter thing. It's like...
Yeah, you know, it's not the most inexpensive thing, but it definitely gives you a unique perspective.
You remember the name of the... Maverick. So we went with Maverick.
Oh, look at that.
Helicopters, and we'll link down below. I'll link you to the exact tour we did.
Yeah.
But they were awesome, really great.
We went around like sunset as well, so I think we had like, it was really beautiful, but like also had like a lot of intense sun on my side. Also, they set you up in the helicopter. You're going to be riding with other people, but they kind of distribute it by weight to keep the helicopter even. So we were seated, I think most of the time you'll get lucky and be beside your partner or your family member.
Or you might not, yeah.
Which you might not, or your friend, but you might not.
Or you
so
might
keep
be
that in mind.
sitting like more inside the helicopter. I think there was like two rows of four basically, or 3 and 4. Basically a pilot and 2 people were sitting in the front and you and I were sitting at the back.
Yeah, but there was another couple as well.
Yeah.
It was great.
You might not be like on the window, is what I'm saying. But you're going to have an amazing time and amazing views regardless.
Yeah, and our captain also pointed out like the name of the forest below us and like various rock structures, I guess. And also the beautiful like Colorado River below or separate rivers that break off from that river. So just like very pleasant. I had a great time. It wasn't scary. It was amazing. Like just as soon as that helicopter left the ground, I was like, oh my goodness, here we go. And I loved it. So definitely worth the cost of admission. I was going to say investment, but we don't like.
Not an investment.
Exactly.
So after that, our next stop was Bryce Canyon. After we did the Grand Canyon and the helicopter tour, we went back to Flagstaff. We spent the night there, and then the next morning we drove out to Bryce Canyon. Did we just go there and kind of go to sleep that day? Was it really far? I don't remember like...
Yep, so we drove directly north from Flagstaff and we stopped for lunch in Page. We went to Big John's Texas Barbecue. It was pretty good. It wasn't like most amazing barbecue, but the whole...
I thought it was great. It was a whole vibe.
It was a vibe, and I just really enjoyed speaking with the people beside us and our server. They had like the smoker going on. Sitting outside was just really lovely. It was a beautiful day, but the landscape surrounding Page was like, it seemed like Mars. I wish we could have stopped and spent more time in it because you just had these like deep red, flat, rocky landscapes, just like as far as the eye could see. It was amazing. Like it was kind of unbelievable what you were looking at.
So then in Bryce, the way it works there is like there's a very, very small town immediately outside of Bryce, and it's kind of like a monopoly on the situation because I think you clearly realize it's like owned, a lot of the places are owned by the same company, I think it seems. So there's a couple hotels and a sort of like a few restaurant places and like an outfitter shop where you can get souvenirs and other things like that. So we stayed at the Best Western Plus Bryce Canyon Grand Hotel.
Yes, and the town we're talking about is Bryce Canyon City.
That's right. So honestly, it was kind of nice. Like it had this big, it was like a much more of like an old school, almost like Canadian.
Like lodge.
Like lodge, yeah. They had like big fireplace, really good breakfast, like really robust breakfast.
And a few of the breakfast items change between the different mornings.
Yeah.
Or the
and they also have like a sweet hot tub that we got to enjoy as well.
Awesome. And I'd say it was mostly couples staying there. Some families, but not as many as the hotel across the street. So I'd say like, yeah, older couples or just like older friends. It wasn't too many families, which was kind of nice.
It's also just the national park demographic in general.
Yes, yeah, that's true.
So
but no, it was a great spot.
So from there, you do take a shuttle to go into the park instead of driving typically. I think you probably can drive in some instances, but the shuttle is the way to go.
Yes.
It's literally like at the end of the parking lot of the hotel, there's like a shuttle stop, and it just goes to that. So we were actually there, I think we were there on October 22nd, 23rd, and we were there right before the shuttle ended. I think it was ending like the next day or two or something like that.
Check that website.
Yeah, so you can still access it, but it won't run. And you do go quite a bit. There's like quite a few stops along inside the park. If you watch our video, you'll see on our way back from the trail, we're just like going a lot further than we thought we would because we're trying to make it back to a specific stop. But so
we're going to the visitor center.
Exactly. Yeah. So the trail we did is the Fairyland loop. Mm-hmm. And there's actually at that stop for that trail, there's like a really great cafe where we got we got some coffee, we got some sandwiches, basically everything we needed.
Yeah, there's washrooms there. There's also a campground there, so they have showers for those campers. So it's kind of like a nice little flushed out area.
Yeah, and then you just need to know like when the last shuttle is coming out of the parks. And also just helps to like plan where you're gonna leave from and basically how you're gonna get out, just to make sure you leave enough time for everything.
But Bryce Canyon has many, many different trails, and there's some like geological highlights that might interest you, so definitely look up what there is to offer. And maybe you don't want to do the Fairyland loop, which is fine.
I think we could definitely have spent like a couple more days there. It was just like really cool, and we just kind of were in and out. We did this one hike, which was amazing. Yeah. Canyon is known for its hoodoos, which is these like vertical rock formations, and there's it's like more there in a concentrated area than anywhere else in the world. Yeah,
you can take your car into the park because some people just do like the drive through the park and they might stop at certain outlooks or viewpoints. And we had considered doing that, but it's kind of like you drive to the end and then come back. So we just didn't really have time and opted to do Capitol Reef instead.
And if you're someone who doesn't have full mobility, or you have like a assistive device that you need to use, you can still do a lot of these parks, and so many people just comment. There's paved trails that you can go and take it in. Like these places make it very easy for people of all ages, all skill levels, all levels of experience to have a great time. So I'd highly recommend. Don't let it kind of like hold you back from going. It's totally cool. They got you. So then the next stop, where are we going?
Capitol Reef.
Capitol Reef. Now this is out of all the parks, has less infrastructure, I would say, around it. Although we went to kind of like there's multiple entrances on different sides of the canyon, I think. Yeah. So what's the one that we went to?
Well, we went, you're putting me on the spot, sir. We went into the direction that the town of Fruta is. Yeah. So I think we did pass
there is a center,
but we didn't like stop by it. And where we parked was kind of just like a public parking area on the side of a
So we went to one side of it, which is the Cohab Canyon Trail, which is where the town of Fruta is, and there's a really great pie place that we highly recommend you visit. The town of Fruta area was really cool, and there's a lot of campgrounds as well, and like really beautiful. There's just deer walking around, there's fruit trees all around you, and this gorgeous canyon.
So just a hot tip, the pie place is at the Gifford Homestead. So you can get yourself a delicious pie there, and then I'm always concerned about where I can use the washroom. So there are washrooms right beside that building, and that's also where the campground is. So
then from there, we basically did the big overnight drive we mentioned earlier to Zion.
Not overnight.
Or sorry, through the night?
Into the night, yeah. It was pretty late because we were like talking to the woman at our hotel lobby and we're being like, is there anywhere we could still grab a bite to eat?
And this is one of the problems that like almost everything was closed. I think there was a place that was open.
Yeah, they had a late night menu. Yeah,
so it
was good. We'll share more restaurants and tips like that later on.
So Zion is like out of all the parks, including the Grand Canyon, is definitely the most built up. And it's one of the most popular national parks in America, obviously. And there's like, it's like a whole town. And we've heard mixed advice, like when we were planning. Some people were like, you should stay in Springdale, but like obviously you can stay out of Springdale and it'll probably be quite a bit cheaper. We mostly looked at places in Springdale. It wasn't like super expensive, so I think it was fine, but obviously everyone's
There are a lot of different options too.
budget was different.
Yeah.
But I think if you can, I would highly recommend staying in Springdale. It's just like, it's kind of has this whole like pedestrian feel where you can walk around everywhere. There's so many little shops and restaurants and people. Everyone's there kind of for the same reason. And it's
There's
right
a
on
lot
the
of art galleries as well.
Yeah.
So it kind of has that like sort of small town,
seaside town.
kitschy vibe, you know, the kind of art galleries that have a lot of stuff on the front lawn that are like spinning around in the wind.
Totally. And it's really nice at the end of a long day to just, you know, come home, get rid of all your hiking gear and just walk to a bar across the street, or in the morning walk to a cafe and have a coffee. That was really lovely about it. And then similarly to Bryce, there's like a shuttle system, but here it's like a little bit more unique, whereas there's two independent shuttles. One goes through Springdale up to the first stop at Zion.
The visitor center, yeah.
The Zion shuttle takes over from there. So you get off, you get onto a Zion shuttle, and the Zion shuttle takes you to all the trailheads and stops within Zion National Park. That's definitely an important step, which we'll come back to.
Because to get deeper into the park like that, you can only take the shuttle.
You can drive to a certain point.
Yeah. But cars are really not supposed to go, yeah.
So the main trails we wanted to do there was the Narrows, which you've seen in the video, of course. And then we did a couple smaller hikes there as well. So we did the Watchman Trail on the first day, which is a great kind of like intro, very easy, maybe like an hour or so. Has a good climb to it.
I'd say longer than an hour, but it was a there and back, and really amazing views.
And then on the last day, which was like our extra day that we threw on, we did a hike that went all the way, almost all the way to Angel's Landing.
Yeah.
It was called the
West Rim Trail.
The West Rim Trail, and then it takes you up this area called Walter's Wiggles, which is kind of cool, which is these really steep switchback.
But it's quite an intense hike. Like you are literally hiking like up a mountain, like a cliff mountain, and but really good energy. Just like we met some really fun people, like a really cool family along the way, and that was just like amazing. Also the sun was setting, so the views were beautiful. But you don't have to go all the way to Angel's Landing. Like I said in our first video, I'm very afraid of heights, so it wasn't really going to be an option for me to do that. I knew I wouldn't be able to handle it. So
yeah, but this trail could be very busy. That's like one of the more popular hikes. Same with the Narrows. And we had a hot tip for how to avoid the crowds. So again, we're gonna hit on those at the end of the video. When we went, it was literally almost empty. It was kind of wild.
oh yeah, but by the time we got to the top,
Yeah.
yeah, that was amazing.
Other than that, you know, this place compared to others had the most like food options. There was a bunch of awesome places we tried, and there's one that we didn't get to, unfortunately. So what do we got in terms of where places people should eat?
So first and foremost, in Zion National Park, there is a brewery. We went there twice. It's such a cool spot to hang out, super chill and relaxed. The first time we were there was a band playing, like a bunch of like dad rock covers. So that was like super charming and fun. And they have a really great selection of beers and a bunch of really good pub food. So
Pretzels.
we had the pretzel sticks, and then the second time we had the pretzel sticks and the fries, which was the way to go. Yeah, they have like a covered patio area, but then more of a open patio with, you know, the wood chips on the ground. You're like right along a small river. So such a great place to hang out after a long hike and just fuel up and chill out. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So a couple of spots that we went to right in the town of Springdale were the Bit and Spur, which is the restaurant that we went to the first night we arrived because they have the late night menu. Super, super helpful. And then we also went back, I think the following night, and it was amazing because the first night we were there, since it was so close to Halloween, they were like starting to set up and pulling out all these Halloween decorations. And then by the next night, the whole thing was covered in like all these wacky and tacky Halloween decorations. And it was so charming and so much fun. So I love that. Another spot close by is Oscar's Cafe. We just got takeout from here when we were in a little bit of a rush. It was very tasty. I think I had some really good sweet potato fries. On our last night, we had a nice meal. This place is kind of funny because like it has a little bit of a farmhouse meets neon sign vibe. The name of it is Porter's. They also stayed open like fairly late for us, and That was just such a satisfying meal to have because there was a whole crazy adventure that had happened previously when we were descending from the West Rim Trail.
This is the moment to tell it.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, we'll get there in a second. But we had such a lovely server as well. She was super, super kind. And even like the restaurant had closed and we were like trying to quickly finish up our meal. And she was like, hey, do you two want any dessert? And I just thought that was really nice that she wasn't like kicking us out right away. And she was offering us dessert and letting us hang out for a bit.
Pretty much everyone who we encountered like working there, you know, is so kind and nice. And it's like you're working in this beautiful area. So a lot of them are just happy that you're there exploring this part of the country and you know, they get to share it with you. So it's just like everyone's really like thankful and grateful to be there.
And so another spot that we checked out was the Deep Creek Coffee Company. So obviously this is a cafe and coffee shop. And we went here just on our more relaxed morning before we did a hike in the afternoon. And yeah, got some really nice breakfast foods, coffee. They have a patio up above the building, which was very comfortable. I think we actually got takeout from there the following day as well when we were leaving. Yeah. We almost left it on the roof of our car. And then last but not least, this is also super helpful, the Sol, S-O-L Food Supermarket is a really awesome supermarket. We got sandwiches from there for our Narrows hike, and they also have pretty much anything you could need, snacks, drinks, produce, whatever, but it was like a really cute little grocery shop. So yeah, we'll mention all those in the description down below, but those are just some restaurants that we enjoyed in Springdale. So in terms of food in Bryce Canyon, we didn't find that there were too many options right in Bryce Canyon City. Both nights we ended up eating at Best Western plus Ruby's Inn. So we were at the regular Best Western. Right across the street is the Ruby's Inn version. There was another restaurant beside Ruby's Inn, but I don't know if we checked reviews and we just weren't as interested. But we ate at this hotel. We just got takeout. It's definitely more of a family-friendly hotel, so there were a ton of families in this dining room, but we, you know, picked something off the menu. They also had a salad bar, which was really nice to choose from. But I think at that point, we were just looking for some sort of lighter option because we had been on the road already for a little while and sort of eating at like a lot of takeout and fast food places.
It's also worth noting they have this whole weird system, if I remember correctly, of like tipping takeout orders automatically for like 20% or something ridiculous.
Yeah, we weren't really into that.
So it's just like a very kind of confusing like markup for getting takeout, basically.
Yeah. The other restaurant beside Ruby's is the Canyon Diner, but we didn't eat there. The whole town of Bryce Canyon City was just very quiet. I think because it was the end of season, like there were a bunch of very like sort of touristy, kitschy stores that weren't open, but looked very charming. So one night, on our second night, we did look for other food options, and about 17 minutes away from Bryce City Canyon is the town of Tropic, which has a lot more food options, and we did try to go to a restaurant there called...
There's a very lovely restaurant that we kind of drove out of the way during some sleepy roads. Yeah. And you're going through the country and you come up on this little like stone house.
It looked like someone's home.
It looked amazing.
Like you pass through Tropic and go off this other sort of side road. It was like a little like, is this the right spot?
Wow, it's so quiet in this town. Yeah. Let's just go here. I'm sure there will be a place for us to have a nice meal.
So it's called the Stone Hearth Grill. And it's actually it seems that you can also stay at this place, the Stone Canyon Inn. So we pulled up, we're so excited to have just like a bit of a nicer meal in a really like sort of chill, calm atmosphere. And we go up to the front door and we ask, oh, do you have a table for two? And they said, do you have a reservation? And we said, no. And they're like, we're sorry, we don't think we're gonna be able to accommodate you. It looked really good, it looked really cute, but unfortunately we did not make it there. So I can't-
If you like a nicer meal and that's something part of your trip, then you wanna maybe like book some of these sort of things in advance.
Yes, but also look in the town of Tropic. Again, it's only 17 minutes away from Bryce Canyon City, so just a really easy drive along the highway. But that's just something else that I wanted to recommend if you're looking for a place to dine.
So before we share how we almost got stranded on the trail and had to walk for several hours back, the one other tip has to do with getting prepared for the Narrows. When you watch the Narrows video, where there's like a bunch of, and you read about it, there's a bunch of advice people are giving, and it can be kind of confusing when you're reading it to like figure out what these terms mean. Because you're hiking in the water of the Narrows and there's big boulders underneath that can be very slippery, it is recommended that you both get like gaiters, which is kind of like rubber like pant suit
like
thing with suspenders, and it also has kind of like these, they're not waterproof boots, but they're like underwater boots that you put on top of the gaiters. And then the kind of package we got also came with like a big wooden walking stick. So it's basically the walking stick, the shoes, and the gaiters. You know, we ended up, there's 2 places at least that can do it. The place that almost everyone goes is inside the park, and it's like the Zion Outfitters or something. Well, there's the name, you know. And that's the place we were recommended to go, and that we were planning on going, kind of going into the trip as well. The problem is this is where everybody goes, and again, there's huge lineups, especially you're doing it like the morning of, you know, you're already trying to wake up early to make it onto the trail, and then you have to wait in line to get like sized up. So we lucked into the place we were staying at, right next to the La Quinta was a place called
Zion
Guru, and that basically you can rent everything for the same price. You could do it the day before, bring it all to your room, and drop it off like after you're done the hike.
The next day.
And it was super convenient because there's nobody there when we were doing it. It was like us and a family. They take their time with everything. They'll give you tips on things to watch out for. For example, you need to be aware of how fast the water's running. You need to be aware of the weather coming up because flash floods can flood the canyon really quickly.
So they're going to recommend to you a longer stick than you think you would need, but you need it because it's going down deep into the water or going out in front of you to navigate where certain boulders are and like where they're going to be coming up as you're stepping. So get a bigger stick than you think.
So
and they also recommended just the amount of layers of clothing that I mentioned earlier. They were the ones who were like, 3 to 4 layers for sure.
Yeah, we were not gonna wear that much clothing, but like if you think about it, you're in cold water, right? And it's pushing against you. So like you're basically in this like fridge. So even though you feel like it's warm outside, that's one thing. The other thing is like you're in a canyon. So a lot of the time you're in the shade, like we mentioned earlier. Whenever it's shady, it's significantly colder. So it's really important to layer up.
You can also get like bike rentals there as well, like e-bikes and regular bikes. It's a whole like outfitters sort of situation. So definitely check out Zion Guru. And we were just so lucky that they were literally, like it felt like they were practically attached to our hotel. So it was super convenient. Yeah,
and if you're going with kids, they also have options there. Basically kids do a full wetsuit so that they can kind of, be fully submerged because there are times where it goes up to almost your shoulders, you know, so if you're a child, obviously that's going to be like up to your... For the deeper parts, I think like parents would also carry their kids because it was pretty deep, and then with the rushing water, it can be kind of intense. And then I'll say just like, it's not required that you wear this stuff. People are like, you can just go, you can go in your shorts. No one's going to stop you.
Oh, and we most definitely did see a whole group of friends.
Don't be a hero. It's so much more pleasant when you have the right equipment. And like, you can do it, but you might hurt yourself. You might be miserable. Spend a small amount of money to get the kit, and it'll just be so much more pleasant.
If you're going in the summer, then you probably don't need all of that. You could do like waterproof shoes and shorts, like in like athleisure kind of situation. But for October, this was perfect.
So coming up to the final steps, let's kind of tell them the time we almost didn't make it back.
Okay.
We've been chatting quite a bit about the shuttles. So Becca and I went onto a hike at this, it was like the West Rim Trail hike. We went in the afternoon. And we're climbing a trail and we're kind of like, oh, this is great. It's like not so many people up there. As we got up top, it very quickly started emptying out up top. Like the ranger left, who was checking permits for Angel's Landing. The couple crowds that were like hanging out, taking photos, all of a sudden you turn around and they were all gone. We started taking more photos. Oh, it's getting really beautiful. Like the light is really
changing.
Nice.
Oh my gosh, the moon is rising over those cliffs. The sky is starting to change color because the sun is setting. And
like to get to this hike, we took, it's kind of like a half hour to 45 minutes maybe on the shuttle. And like you can walk those distances in the park. 20 minutes. But like to get back walking from the place where we were was about, I don't know, like an hour to the visitor center. Let's pretend.
No, it was 2 hours. 2 hours? 2 hours.
Yeah. And then it was another time to go back to our actual hotel, like once you left the park. as it's getting dark, we sort of overhear someone say like, oh, when's the last like shuttle coming? And it kind of occurs to us that we don't really know when the last shuttle
there was a family. There was a mom and her
teen kids, kind of tween
kids, yeah.
They start talking about it and kind of panicking, like, I think it's not going to come.
Yeah.
The boy's like, I'm going to run ahead. I'm going to save everyone. And the sister's like, you're not running anywhere.
Stop showing off, like literally. So we had already started, so just to be clear, we had realized that we should get going, and so we were starting to descend back down the mountain, down the trail.
As you can see in the video, this is a very wide expanse that we spent a long time climbing up onto this mountain also, and we see the shuttle way in the distance, and you see one of them pass every once in a while.
Yeah.
In the back of your mind, you wonder, is that the last one?
Yeah, and I feel like we kind of had an idea of like a time, but we were like, wait, is that the time that it's like leaving the furthest stop on the trail, which I believe is the Temple of
Snowawa, that's the Narrows.
The Narrows,
Yeah.
or is that like when it's leaving the visitor center? And so we really did not know what we were getting into.
So the family kind of ran ahead, I guess.
Yeah, we lost.
And we're going, so we're trying to speed it up.
Yeah.
Like kind of midway through the hike, it's gotten dark, like fully dark
Yeah.
now. And we do see once in a while again a shuttle go by, and then it just sort of like stops. And as you get lower, it's harder to see like into the distance.
Yeah.
We're kind of trying to rush as fast as we can now, but obviously it's dark. You don't want to trip and kind of hurt yourself.
Yeah.
It's getting really cold. I don't have any sweater or anything, so I'm just like freezing. But I think mentally we're kind of like, we can do the walk.
We were preparing.
Kind of like, okay, we're probably gonna have to do the walk. We get down and it's pitch black. Not even like dark, like you can't see anything.
No, there's no like lights or anything around there.
Yeah, there's
Around
no
the
people, and there's like a shuttle stop with like bathrooms and kind of campgrounds nearby, but there's no people around.
No.
Like we haven't heard anyone. We get our phones and we sort of like look at the
Looking for any
map
signage
or like and like we're not getting a clear answer. And then like very lightly in the distance, I hear like a slow rumble of this what has to be a bus.
And then a little twinkling of lights. And we were like, no way. And this was like literally within 30 seconds of us arriving and like looking around at these signs with our phone flashlights. Like we were so lucky and so close. And then
as this bus is kind of like nearing us.
Yes. All of a sudden this man just emerges out of the darkness and he goes, we caught the last shuttle. And I was like, where did you come from? And like it was literally that dark that I did not see him coming. The shuttle like pulls up and the doors open and we like just could not believe it, but we were so thankful. And we just went to the back of the bus and it was so toasty.
We were like, oh, sorry, man. Did we miss the like shuttle in town already?
Yeah.
He's like, don't worry about it. I'm gonna call them in and they'll just wait for you there.
There's one straggler. Like there's one bus that waits for the stragglers. That's literally what they said. I'll call ahead and let them know we're on the way.
It was the sweetest ride back. And then when we get to that second bus, it's full of people who are clearly waiting just for us for like 20 to 30 minutes. We're like, hey, everybody. And they're just like...
Yeah, there's like this like dim light on in there. And then he didn't even make all like the individual like shuttle stops through Springdale. He was like, all right, who's getting off at 3? Who's getting off at 4, 5, 6? Okay, so I'll go straight to 4 to begin with. So it was great. Like we could not believe our luck because the walk from the visitor center to our bus stop outside of, near our hotel wouldn't have been awful, but like it felt like we were getting the royal treatment at that point.
And then we went to that restaurant that Becca mentioned, the Porters.
Yes.
And we're sitting there having like a full hot meal in our
or
fresh
a cold
clothing,
salad.
warm.
Yes, enjoying a glass of wine.
And we're just thinking about like we would still be like halfway to
we'd be walking in the dark and cold still if we hadn't gotten so lucky. So what's the point of this story?
Make sure you check the schedule.
Take a photo of it. Yeah. Take a photo of the bus schedule within Zion so that you know for sure when to expect the shuttles, when the last one is going to be, and just plan accordingly. Because my goodness, we got so lucky, and I find that we're very fortunate. Things seem to work out for us a lot of the time when we're traveling. But this was like a really close call and we got so lucky, and it kind of like made for an awesome, somewhat hilarious story in the end. So take a picture of that schedule.
So that like top level, that was our trip. One thing I'd mention as like kind of a key thing is like if you're going to do this trip and you're going to do more than 2 national parks, so if you're going to do 3 national parks or more, you should buy the America Parks Pass.
Yes, the annual pass.
It's valid for a year and basically gives you access to all the parks.
I think it's for a family or like the car.
Yeah, so definitely worth it if you're doing more than 2, I believe, parks. So you're doing 3 or more, but check it out. So, okay, we kind of covered all the main things. Before we dive into our 5 tips to avoid crowds on your trip, make sure, if you're enjoying this video, first of all, leave a comment. We're human beings. We want praise. We want to know that you enjoyed it and it was helpful so we can make more of this.
Yeah. Or if you have any extra questions, we're happy to answer them as well.
Yeah, make sure you hit subscribe because we're just getting started. We're gonna do one of these sort of like info videos for every big trip we go on. So yeah, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And it's kind of a more like adrenaline adventure that I go on that I'm excited to share with you. If you haven't seen our 3 Utah hiking videos, visit the playlist and watch those as well. But other than that, here's the kind of 5 tips that we learned over the course of all our research and our experience doing it. Maybe we can do one each. So I'll start with the first one, which is maybe like an obvious one, but go early to things. So if you're leaving to go onto a trail, basically in almost all instances, the earlier you go, the less people there are going to be. If you think about it, you're setting off on a trail. The group you set off with will be the one that you're with. So if there's fewer people when you set out, they're not going to catch up to you. Okay, so you're going to get basically the whole hike a little more to yourself. So that's number 1. Go early. Number 2.
Number 2. Avoid peak crowds or peak times of year. I mentioned it earlier, but the summertime is going to be one of the most popular times to go, simply because kids are out of school and it's an opportunity for families to, enjoy a trip together. So, you might want to avoid that time. Also, the weather might be quite hot. Go, into the fall. The foliage is going to be so beautiful. It'll be quieter, it'll be cooler, or you consider the end of winter, early spring as well. The foliage won't quite be there, but neither will the crowds. So that's something that you want to consider depending on what your schedule allows.
And going off of Becca's of avoiding crowds is also just check when the season ends at each park that you're going to. So different parks will have different seasons in terms of like the infrastructure that's open for people, and going right after or right before the season ends might give you a window where you can still benefit from all the awesome things going on in the park without really hitting the crowds, kind of like we did in Bryce Canyon, where we came right after as the shuttles were finishing, so there was a lot less crowds because it wasn't realistic for people to do long trips there.
So tip number 4 is to consult the AllTrails app in the days leading up to your hike. What I really love about this app is that there is a bit of a discussion board under each individual hike. So you're seeing tips literally from 1 day before, 2 days before, 3 days before. And it's super convenient in terms of seeing, where it was really buggy or it was really muddy, or just what to expect in general, or what time of day you should go. Oh, I found a lot of people were going in the morning, so I went in the afternoon and I caught a sunset and it was absolutely incredible. So this is another reason why you should download this app, and I don't know if that includes the paid version, but just get the paid version. If you're going to be serious about hiking these trails, get the paid version.
Yeah, the free version is great. The paid version basically allows you to track your hike offline and save an offline map. So for most people, the free version is great, but as a safety precaution, I recommend the paid version. It's like $60 a year or something like that. But yeah, a lot of great advice in the comments. If you
influenced what time of day we were taking certain hikes. So
if you use AllTrails at home, your local hikes might get an update every few months or something, or a few weeks. Whereas places that are so busy, multiple people a day are giving feedback on the trail. So we're going to go at first thing in the morning, and we shifted it to the afternoon.
Which was really, really nice because we had gotten up early the day before for the Narrows. And instead we got to go to the cafe in the morning, use the hot tub at the La Quinta, and do some laundry.
And then our final trail is go further. In every kind of place, like as you start, there's going to be a big crowd of people, specifically the Narrows. We did an in and out hike. At the beginning you're walking with crowds. And as you go further and further in, the crowds thin out. There's moments where you're on your own for a while. You're just walking, and to be alone in such a huge, massive, kind of cavernous environment, it's a pretty magical experience. So yeah, those are the 5 tips to avoid crowds. So avoid peak crowds, for that location. Go early when you can. Go right after the season is done. Check AllTrails in the days leading up to your hike, and also go further on in and out trails, and you're gonna have a much better time than the average person who's just, showing up and expecting a good time.
Which might also happen, but we like to be prepared over here.
Awesome. So thank you so much for watching this video. It's been a blast sharing this adventure with you. And we have some pretty incredible adventures that we've been working on and planning. Again, if you're new here, we are a creative couple living in Toronto, and we're traveling more and more. We own a photo and video production company called Worker Bee Supply. So this is a bit of like a, detox from work, where we get to just enjoy ourselves, use photo and video in a less commercial way, and also share these incredible places that we go with you.
Yeah, and learning along the way and wanting to share it with all of you.
If you found this video helpful, please, again, let us know down in the comments below so we can make more of these for you. If you enjoyed the video and you want to hang out with us, make sure you hit subscribe so we see you in the next video. Coming in, the water's pretty warm.